You have to forgive me. There's literally no room left in this place to make a video right now because of Christmas decorations and stuff. I wanted to make this video to say that Dr. Phil is a hypocrite and a scumbag. And as usual, I don't say anything I'm not prepared to back up. Now, Friday, Dr. Phil wanted to talk about the high-profile police incidents lately, the Garner, Brown situations. And I thought we were going to get a good discussion because he usually does good discussions. He has thousands of guests on, and he explores every facet of their life when he talks about what they do. And he knows what he's talking about all the time. Okay. Now, a few years ago, Dr. Phil had on a man who was an amateur director of a series called Bum Fights. He wanted to talk about exploitation for homeless people. And this guy makes money having homeless guys fight, having homeless guys hurt themselves, having homeless guys degrade themselves. And Dr. Phil had him on this show to raise awareness about him. And the guy came on with a suit on and a Dr. Phil haircut, in person like a 5-year-old. And Dr. Phil said, you know what? I said, never mind, just get out of here. And he had security throw him out. Okay? Well, Dr. Phil's first guest on the situation at hand was Al Sharpton. So you don't want to have a guy on your show who degrades homeless people. But you had a guy that degrades black people, a guy that helps hype up a false murder, a false rape allegation, a guy that starts a riot in a Jewish neighborhood, which leads to a man being stabbed to death, a guy who goes on a tirade about white people that makes a lunatic set fire to a building and kill 8 people. That's fine. He can talk. He also called Al Sharpton Reverend, which is an insult to people who really are reverends. Now, Al Sharpton said that Mike Brown was shoplifting, and he would have gotten a ticket. Okay. Petty larceny misdemeanor means you steal an item less than $1,000. Grand larceny felony means you steal an item more than $1,000. Shoplifting is larceny in a store. Now, when Mike Brown took the cigars, he intended to shoplift. When the manager caught him at the door, that was robbery. Because robbery, which is a felony, means the threat of violence or physical violence during the theft of an item. Any violence, even if it's just pushing, is a felony. Now, Mike Brown would not have gotten a ticket, first of all, for simple larceny, petty larceny, shoplifting. You have to go to criminal court. You can do maybe community service or a week in jail, depending on your prior record, the judge, your lawyer, how much you're willing to cooperate. Here you have a felony robbery, which means you're going to get, depending on your record, depending on the judge, depending on your cooperation, you're going to get anywhere between 6 months in county jail to maybe a year and change in state prison. Okay? Now, a 6'4", 300-pound man pushing you into a potato chip rack. Now, if you are committing a felony robbery and someone dies as a result, even if it's an accident, that is automatically first-degree murder. So that incident was a little more serious than they thought it was. They said it was. Okay? Now, a 6'4", 300-pound man coming at you like this, because Mike Brown turned and then came back like this. Coming back like this is a deadly threat when you're 300 pounds, because this can become this very easily. Now, Dr. Phil has had wife beaters on his show. And he tells the woman, you can go to the shelter or you can work out your relationship. I'll get you counseling. On the Dr. Vinny show, woman will go to the shelter, wife beater will go to prison. Okay? But Dr. Phil tells guys, listen, you can't beat your wife, it's not fair, you're bigger than she is, you're stronger than she is, you're a coward, you're a bully. Okay, that's fine. A man who beats up his wife is a coward. Okay? But you have a 6'4", 300-pound man beating up a guy that's a third of his size. Isn't that bullying too? Now, Dr. Phil has had people on his show that basically, little kids that want to kill their parents. He said kids that want to kill their parents, He said kids that beat the shit out of their siblings. He said kids that were expelled from school for beating up teachers. He said kids that torture their pets. He said kids that drink and do drugs and whore themselves. Okay? And when Dr. Phil has an out-of-control kid, yes, he does offer counseling and rehab for that kid, but he also pulls the parents aside and says, listen, your son's violent because he sees you beat up his mother. Your daughter's out of control because you're her friend, not her parent. And he tells the parents, and he's right most of the time, your kid is out of control because you messed up raising him. I agree. You have Mike Brown's parents on via satellite with their lawyer. Why don't you tell them that they're responsible for their son's behavior the way you tell other parents in America? Mike Brown's a child. Okay, Mike Brown's a child. When a 6'4", 300-pound child is robbing a store and trying to murder a police officer, Dr. Vinny's question is, where were you for 18 years? Okay? Where were you? And I'm telling all the parents this. I don't care what color you are. Okay? If your child is trying to kill a police officer today, my question is, where were you the past 10, 15, 20 years of that child's life? I don't know. Okay? Why doesn't Dr. Phil raise that question? I don't know. Now, Dr. Phil had a correspondent on. Yes, he's black. Fine. And this correspondent said the grand jury was told it is legal to shoot a fleeing felon in the back. Okay, let's talk about that. In 1985, the Supreme Court ruled there are 2 qualifications that must be met in order for a police officer to shoot a suspect in the back as he's running away. Qualification number 1, that person must commit a felony in the officer's presence. Attempting to murder a police officer was a felony last time I checked. That qualification is met. Qualification 2, that person has to be so dangerous that the only way to stop them is to shoot them in the back. You can't let them escape because they're so dangerous they're going to kill somebody right away. Serial killers, mass murderers, terrorists, you got to shoot them in the back. Would Mike Brown be so dangerous that you would argue that it was okay to shoot him in the back running away? That's a good question. And I would consider that argument. Now, shooting suspects in the back. In this case, that is irrelevant because you have 5 eyewitnesses, including Dorian Johnson, Mike Brown's cousin / accomplice, that said Mike Brown was running away with his hands in the air, crying like a little girl, and he was shot in the back. You have 15 witnesses, 6 of whom are black, who said that Mike Brown approached the police car without permission, swung at a police officer, they heard a popping sound, Mike Brown retreated, the officer pursued him for 3 seconds maybe, the officer did not recommence firing, Mike Brown turned around, charged back towards the officer with his head down like a football player, and then the officer recommenced firing and killed him. And they all said the officer did not fire when Mike Brown's back was turned. Okay? Eyewitnesses are wrong and can lie. Okay. Forensic scientists said, and believe me, I took a class in forensics, I know what I'm talking about. They know 1,000 times what I know. Forensic scientists said Mike Brown's blood was in the car. Why is he in the front seat of a police car? His blood was on the officer's uniform. His blood was on the gun. GSR was on his body parts, which indicates the gun was fired, the first shot at least, from damn near point blank range. His fingerprints are on the gun, which prove that there was a fight over the gun. Why are you touching a police officer's gun? Now, there were 3 autopsies, one ordered by the family. All 3 autopsies said that the final shots were all fired in the chest. Actually, all shots were in the chest, especially the final shots. And the top of the head was because he was bent down, running forward. One of those three autopsies was performed by Dr. Michael Baden, who is the greatest pathologist in world history, who has done every famous autopsy in the past 4 decades. So, even if you exclude all the eyewitnesses, the forensic science and the medical examinations of the body prove beyond all reasonable doubt the bullets came in the front and there was a fight over the gun. Dr. Phil says no matter how flat you make a pancake, it's got 2 sides. Really? Wouldn't you want to see that side of the flat pancake? The side where the fight over the gun and the blood splatter and the bullets in the chest and the charging forward? Wouldn't you want to hear that side of the story? No. Dr. Phil actually went to the audience and went like this. The grand jury was told to look through the prism of it's okay to shoot a suspect in the back. If you came from space and landed on Earth and saw the Dr. Phil show, you would automatically think that this poor guy was shot in the back. He left the show with the false belief that he was shot in the back. And they completely ignored the fight over the gun. In fact, the only mention of the fight over the gun was when he was talking to Mike Brown's mother. He said, I heard your son assaulted a cop. That's not true, is it? Nah, that's not true. He answered it for her. Okay, the only mention of that fight was that, your son doesn't fight cops. Nah, I got the wrong. Yeah, your son didn't do that. Okay, he actually tried to deny that there was a fight with the officer. And he completely did not talk about the shooting in the chest, the rushing forward, the gunshot residue, the blood splatter, the eyewitnesses. He went out of his way not to talk about it. Now, he has an international television show. And he is a psychologist who has also worked with the courts as an advisor. And from a professional standpoint, it is absolutely immoral for a professional to openly on national television, international television, lie about a case or deliberately hide evidence about a case. That is so unprofessional. Now, this correspondent that said that brought up another issue. This issue involved a white man. Now, the white man, there was a police officer who had a body camera. And from the officer's point of view, you see the gun. Get your hands out of your pants, get your hands out of your pants, get your hands out of your pants, get your hands out of your pants. The suspect was like this, with his hands in his pants. Now, what happened first? A police officer can only draw his gun if he either A, witnesses a felony, or B, has a felony warrant for your arrest. He cannot just whip out his gun. So when I see an officer with his gun drawn, my question is why? And because the video starts with a gun is already drawn, I cannot answer that. Remember Rodney King? They didn't talk about the 6'2", 220-pound guy. They didn't talk about the felony robbery conviction. They didn't talk about the parole. They didn't talk about the 100-mile-an-hour police chase. They didn't talk about the lunging at the police officer. All you saw is a bunch of white cops beating up a black guy. They edited out the first part. And this video shows a cop with his gun drawn, but it doesn't show the first part of the video where the cop draws the gun. And what's the reason? Did the guy yell, "I'm gonna kill a cop today"? Was the guy selling drugs? What is the reason for the cop to draw his gun? I don't know. Now, he had his hands in his pants, he would not take them out, and eventually the cop shot him. Then when the cop went to search his body, he found no weapon. Then he delivered medical attention, and he's like, "Oh man, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this, man? What the hell's wrong with you?" The cop was in shock. "Why'd you do this?" Now, there was an FBI analyst who had admitted that he had been in situations where he had shot people before, didn't get into any details, and they argued him down like crazy. Like, they were like, they were all attacking. Even Dr. Phil was like, "Come on, man, like, what?" The FBI analyst was an actual agent who actually had to shoot people. And he was in these situations. They're like, "Oh, whatever. We don't want to hear from you. Quiet him down." Now, the issue is this. Dr. Phil said a couple things that were stupid. Number one, Why didn't the cop wear a vest? Most cops do wear vests, but they're also thinking, A, does the suspect have a FN57 on his body? B, is the suspect gonna go for my head? C, the other innocent people that are around me that I'm responsible for, are they wearing vests? Now, in my line of work, if I think someone's gonna run a red light and I have a pedestrian over there, I yell, don't, stop, he's not gonna stop, you stop. If the person is next to me, I grab them. I can't tell you how many people I saved. There's no number for it. Only God knows the number. You have a white line here for when you stop for a red light. Here's the car coming towards the white line. I cannot wait the second it takes the car to move past the white line and say, okay, now I'll act. I have to automatically assume the car is going to pass the white line, and I have to automatically stop pedestrians. And if I'm wrong, so what? But if I'm right, the pedestrian will be safe and the car will sail by harmlessly. Police officer, same situation. Okay? Dr. Phil actually said, why didn't he wait for the suspect to actually pull his hand out? Well, for the same reason why I don't wait for the car to pass the white line before I grab people. Because it takes less than a second for the suspect to pull the trigger. It takes less than a second for the suspect to throw a ninja star. Okay? It takes less than a second for this. Okay? You don't know. Okay? And I tell everyone in my neighborhood, I say flat out, I cannot wait 1 second to see if the car is going to hit the white line or pass the white line. I have to stop you. I can't wait. I can't afford it. Same thing for the officer. He can't afford to wait for the hand to come out. And I tell everyone, if a police officer tells you, get your hands out of your pants now, you get your fucking hands out of your fucking pants right now. Because once the officer says, get your hands out of your pants, if you continue to keep your hands in your pants, he's going to interpret that as a threat. He might be wrong, but it's still a threat. Okay? And in this case, the officer shot the guy. And when an officer sees you with your hands in your pants, he's thinking about the cop last week who was shot and paralyzed because the suspect had a gun in his pants. He's thinking about the cop that's dead because the suspect threw a knife at him. Okay? You cannot just say, well, you should have waited an extra second. Okay? So Dr. Phil with the white guy with the hands in the pants, that was him being an idiot. You know, you don't understand. You know, not your line of work. You're not a cop. You're not a security guard. You're not a federal agent, okay? You don't live the lifestyle of, I could die tonight. Okay, I'm in a bad neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning upholding the law. And any second a guy could jump out and kill me. Okay, you don't know what these women go through. Some cops are men, some cops are women. But you don't know what a woman goes through with her kids at home at night praying to Christ that her husband comes home. It's disgusting. Sonny Hostin, let me check my time out. Okay. I wanted to check my time. I'm only allowed 27 minutes on that for some reason. Sonny Hostin was a former prosecutor. I also gotta go to work in a few minutes. Was a federal prosecutor. And they had her on via satellite. Yes, she's half black, half Hispanic. Fine. She's talking about Darren Wilson did a couple of things wrong. I don't know if she's right or not, but she did a couple of things wrong. I think she said he falsified a report, or he made a mistake, or he changed the story. She talked about what the chief did wrong, what the detectives did wrong, what the prosecutor did wrong, what everybody else did wrong. And Sonny Hostin ended the conversation by saying that Darren Wilson should have been indicted for murder. That was her summation of it. Now, Dorian Johnson tells a grand jury a story that is scientifically proven false. That's perjury, felony. Dorian Johnson is standing next to his cousin when his cousin commits a robbery. It doesn't matter that excuse me. It doesn't matter that Dorian Johnson did not commit the robbery. It matters that Dorian Johnson was standing next to his cousin and did not retreat, did not call police and did not cooperate. That's why there are so many guys in prison, because their best friend ratted them out. Because they committed a felony, their best friend was right next to them, and the prosecutor said, listen, you're going to testify against your friend or you're going to go to jail with him. Dorian Johnson made no attempt to flee from the robbery and call police. Dorian Johnson stayed in Michael Brown's company. Dorian Johnson made no attempt to flee when Mike Brown tried to kill a police officer. He just stood right there. Okay, so Dorian Johnson is guilty of perjury, accessory to robbery, accessory to attempted murder of a police officer, and Sonny Hostin does not say one word about him not being indicted. You're going to throw every police officer in that community under the bus, but yet when you have a guy who commits 3 felonies in one day, not a word about him. They don't say anything about the ravages of the town. They don't say anything about the black store owners who had their places burned down. They don't say anything about Michael Brown's mother's boyfriend saying, burn this motherfucker down, burn this bitch down, burn this bitch down. No. Okay? The entire episode was about why Darren Wilson is wrong. Entire episode. Why Darren Wilson is wrong. And let's lie to cover up what Mike Brown did wrong. Let's not talk about the assault on the officer. Let's not talk about the wrestling for the gun. Let's not talk about the bullets in the front of the chest. And the robbery. They talked about the robbery. They said, they showed 4 still pictures. They didn't show the actual video. And they're like, Dr. Phil said, showing the robbery video defamed Mike Brown. Okay, so showing a robbery video defames Mike Brown. Does committing the robbery defame Mike Brown? No, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna go to work in a few minutes. I'm gonna sum this up now. I'm talking fast. I gotta go to work. I already mumble when I talk. Okay, so here's my summation. If you are a peace officer, paramedic, fireman, police officer, and you're in Dr. Phil's area where his house is, his studio, and you get a call that Dr. Phil is having a problem at his house or his studio, my advice to you, keep on driving. Because why do you want to risk your safety, okay, to protect someone who would only go on international television and degrade you and cover up something to make you look worse? Okay? If you went to Dr. Phil's house and a guy was breaking into the house to attack his wife and you shot and killed the guy, Dr. Phil would only come on television to talk about why that guy was not that bad and why you are such a bad cop. My advice to Dr. Phil, you ever have a break-in in your house, you ever have a robbery, attempted home invasion, murder, attempted rape, attempted any crime, you ever have a problem in your house, you pick up the phone, you call Mike Brown's mother, and you tell Mike Brown's mother you're in trouble. Watch what her response is. Okay? Because peace officers out there have to protect the public. And you know what? While they're wasting their time protecting you, who throws them under the bus, they could be protecting a lot of other people that appreciate their help. Down below, I'm going to upload this tonight when I get home from work. Down below, you're going to see a link to Darren Wilson's 45-minute interview. You're also going to see a link to Mike Brown's parents' interview so that you can look at both stories and form your own opinion. Can't be any more fair than that. Thank you, I have to go.